The crowd stood in stunned silence. Moments ago, Hunt, despite his small and unimposing frame, had decisively defeated Thames, one of the more physically dominant participants. The impact of the match rippled through the onlookers. Every participant present had expected Thames to win, yet here stood Hunt, barely breaking a sweat. The upset was not only shocking, but it shattered expectations and reshaped everyone's understanding of what true strength looked like. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Hunt turned to face the others, his eyes filled with cold intensity. He raised his voice and declared, "Are there any other fools who think they can stand against me?" His words were sharp and mocking, cutting straight through the pride of the other participants. Many clenched their fists in frustration, their egos bruised. One man, unable to tolerate the insult, stepped forward. "I'll face you," he said with narrowed eyes. The second duel began swiftly, but like the first, it ended just as quickly. In the shadows, a cloaked participant named Fred observed silently. His gaze was calm but focused, and his thoughts were far deeper than the others. As expected, he mused, "Those who overestimated their abilities and underestimated the might of Dimitri's warriors are being eliminated one by one. There's no place here for arrogance without strength." A voice cut through the tension. "Next," Chris called out, signaling for the next participant to step forward. Fred exhaled softly, then took a step into the arena. He knew this was his moment. If he wanted to earn his place in Dimitri, he had to prove himself here and now. No amount of titles or background prestige would matter. He would be judged only by his performance. "I choose you," Fred announced, pointing at Chris. Chris's smile deepened, but he gave a respectful nod. "Understood." Fred squared his shoulders. As the Knight Commander of the prestigious Memphis family and the 10th-ranked warrior in the entire Kronos Empire, he had walked the path of elites all his life. But he knew better than to rely on his rank here. Dimitri was a land of warriors, not aristocrats. He had to break free from the shadow of his imperial origin and make a lasting impact. This was his opportunity to prove that he belonged here. The duel began with explosive movement. Fred charged forward without hesitation. Yet before he could land a blow, Chris rushed in with greater speed and precision. He struck first, and Fred was barely able to parry the attack in time. The force of the blow still pushed him back. Fred quickly recovered and retaliated with a powerful counter, activating his aura sword and driving Chris away. Without wasting a second, Fred unleashed a full burst of aura and launched a frontal assault. Chris met him head-on, releasing his own aura with equal intensity. Their auras clashed violently, producing a thunderous shockwave that rippled through the arena. The onlookers gasped as dust and wind surged around the two combatants. Fred leapt back and assessed the situation carefully. Something didn't make sense. Chris's aura doesn't feel like it has reached the 5-star level, he thought, yet he's meeting me with equal force. How is that possible? The realization unsettled him. Dimitri was far more formidable than he had anticipated. But he couldn't afford to back down. Not now, not for his family's honor, and not for his own pride. As Chris advanced again, Fred prepared to counter. He went in for a defensive block, expecting a direct clash, but Chris feinted. With a swift motion, Chris dodged and got in close. "Fred," Chris said calmly, "you pass." Before Fred could even process the words, Chris struck him in the abdomen, not with the blade, but with the back of his sword handle. The impact knocked Fred to the ground. When Fred finally regained consciousness, he found himself lying at the edge of the arena. Slowly sitting up, he took in the reality of what had happened. He had lost, but he had also been acknowledged. Chris had accepted his strength. Despite the defeat, Fred couldn't help but smile. My judgment was right, he thought. Dimitri is the only force capable of standing against the Kronos Empire. Cheers erupted around him. Curious, Fred got to his feet and looked toward the center of the arena. The crowd had gathered again, their eyes locked on a new battle. This time, the duel was between Kevin and Logan the Steel, ranked 19th in Valhalla. Fred's eyes narrowed. If Kevin is facing Logan, he wondered, then who is Chris up against now? Chris's next opponent was the 3rd-ranked warrior of Valhalla, ranked 6th on the entire continent. One of the 12 strongest known combatants alive. The true test had only just begun. The man now standing in the arena wasn't just any swordsman. He was a legend in the making. He held one of the 12 sacred swords of the continent, wielded a 5-star aura, and was widely recognized as the greatest swordsmanship genius of his era. His name was Ares, the wandering swordsman. Ares yawned casually and muttered, "I almost fell asleep waiting." Born in Valhalla, Ares had shattered every known record in swordsmanship and had risen through the ranks at an unprecedented pace, becoming the youngest-ranked warrior in the continent's history. From the very beginning, Ares had been a prodigy, one that couldn't be compared to anyone else. What made him truly terrifying wasn't just his aura, but the mastery of his swordplay. He had defeated countless aura users, many of whom were stronger than him in raw power. And yet, without relying on aura superiority, Ares overwhelmed them through pure technique. Even the Emperor of Valhalla had spent over a decade attempting to recruit Ares, offering wealth, titles, and command. But Ares swore loyalty to no one. He was untethered, bound to no kingdom or faction, a true wandering swordsman. From the sidelines, Jonathan watched closely. He immediately recognized Ares. That's him. Ares, the sword genius of Valhalla, he thought. But what puzzled Jonathan more was Ares' presence here, at Roman's private soldier recruitment. Ares, a man of such stature and independence, applying for service under Roman? No matter how Jonathan tried to rationalize it, it made no sense. This very act threatened to upset the delicate balance of power. Suddenly, Ares launched forward with incredible speed, charging directly at Chris. Chris reacted swiftly, managing to block the first strike, but the assault didn't stop there. Ares unleashed a flurry of relentless blows. Chris did his best to parry and defend, but it was clear he was being pushed back. His movements, while sharp, couldn't match Ares' fluid, overwhelming swordsmanship. Chris gritted his teeth. This is completely different from when Diego pressured me using aura alone, he thought. This man's swordplay, it rivals the Azura sword technique itself. Blades clashed repeatedly, each strike echoing like thunder across the arena. Then, with a surge of force, both Ares and Chris were pushed back from each other. In that fleeting moment, Chris saw an opening. Without hesitation, he activated his signature move, Flash. In a blink, Chris vanished, appearing directly in front of Ares with his sword cloaked in shining aura. He struck with blinding speed, a move few had ever seen and none had survived unscathed. But to everyone's shock, including Chris's, Ares deflected the attack with ease. Gasps rippled through the spectators. Chris's eyes widened in disbelief. He caught up with the speed of my flash aura? No one has ever done that. Ares smiled calmly. As expected of Dimitri's flash. It's not just an empty title, he said, eyes gleaming with excitement. Please, don't disappoint me before the end. On the other side of the arena, Chris's mind raced. He realized one terrifying truth. If even a single moment of my swordplay falters, I will lose. There was no room for error. Ares was not an opponent he could overpower with brute strength or aura alone. Meanwhile, the duel between Kevin and Logan was still underway, and it wasn't going well for Kevin. Logan, known as the Steel, ranked 19th in Valhalla, was beginning to dominate. Kevin had sustained injuries and was clearly struggling to keep up with the sheer destructive force Logan unleashed with each strike of his aura-infused blade. The other participants watched, thoroughly impressed. Logan's brutal, unwavering assault was exactly what they had expected from him. To them, it was no surprise. Logan lived up to every bit of his reputation. In their eyes, he truly deserved the title Steel. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Chris and Kevin, Dimitri's two strongest pillars. Could they both fall today?